Key point number 1. Questions test the application of knowledge, not the recall of random fact. The NBME makes this abundantly clear throughout the entire document that what they're doing is not testing you on the recall of facts. Note that this is likely different from what you've experienced with your block exams for medical school. Let's think about the exact system that medical professors find themselves in. Their incentives are to try to create the most expedient questions in the least amount of time so they can go and do the work that they were paid to do, which is clinical practice and research. The easiest questions for them to write are going to be things where they can just look at their PowerPoint slides and find random facts that they can test you on to see if you were paying attention. This is very, very different from the NBME. I'm going to read some direct quotes from the NBME Question Writer's Guide, and you can see the difference in the approach for the NBME. 1. Questions should not focus on the direct assessment of isolated facts. 2. Avoid asking about the leading cause of death in some subpopulation. Instead, focus on the application of this knowledge. These are just a small sample of the quotes that you'll find throughout the entire document, emphasizing how the NBME writes questions about conceptual application as opposed to the recall of random knowledge. This is also one of the reasons why oftentimes medical students who do really well on their tests in medical school may struggle with step 1, step 2, or step 3 because the rules for how to do well in these different contexts is going to be different. Key point number 2. The number of questions is proportional to the topic's importance. This one may seem obvious, but more important topics have more questions than less important topics. The NBME says important topics should be weighted more heavily than less important topics. The testing time devoted to each topic should reflect the relative importance of the topic. In other words, you should expect a lot more questions on heart failure, asthma, kidney disease, coronary artery disease, rather than those random questions that you worry about congenital diseases. It's true that there are rare diseases, but their rarity on the exam is oftentimes proportional to the rarity that you actually have them in real life. The exception to this would be in something like biochemistry, where they're using rare diseases to illustrate a key sort of pathway or a key enzyme and using that as a way to test a key concept. You should spend your time on the things that are more clinically relevant. Either the disease is going to be more serious or it's going to be more common. Important point number 3. Clinical vignettes weed out memorizers. So we said the NBME focuses on applying concepts, but how do they do that? The NBME uses clinical vignettes as a way to weed out memorizers and force you to apply important clinical concepts. Here's a direct quote from the NBME on why they like using clinical vignettes. Questions with a clinical vignette as part of the item stem have several benefits. First, the authenticity of the examination is greatly enhanced by using questions that require test takers to solve clinical problems. Second, the questions are more likely to focus on important information rather than trivia. Third, these questions help to identify those test takers who have memorized a substantial body of factual information but are unable to use that information effectively in clinical situations. So, do vignettes force you to apply critical knowledge? Check. Do they focus on critical concepts and not esoterica? Check. Do they weed out memorizers? Checkmate. Critical issue number 4. There's a single question type. Single best answer, closed responses. So when I was at Stanford, one of the hardest exams that we had was in anatomy. One of the reasons why the exam was so hard is that they would give you a test where there would be like 4 or 5 answer choices, and they would say, which of the following answer choices is false? The content itself was difficult, but the format of the test made it extraordinarily more difficult because you had to evaluate 5 different answer choices and figure out which of them wasn't true. In many ways, this NBME rule of having a single best response is actually a boon for people that are taking step 1, step 2, or step 3. And the reason for this is that actually just because the content itself is challenging. They call this question format single best answer, closed response. Single best answer refers to the fact that there's only one best answer, and closed response refers to the fact that the question is a complete sentence, not a fragment. If you're a medical student or a doctor preparing for either the USMLEs or COMLEX or one of your medical board exams, then be sure to sign up for our free 14-step program where we'll walk you through the most efficient ways for you to improve your score in a short period of time. And if you're interested in getting there faster, be sure to book a free call with our team where we'll break down what it is that's holding you back and, if it makes sense, explain how it is that we can help you to get there more efficiently.